Okay, so this week you have, in week 5, by the way, we're doing the man-in-the-middle attack. So when you come in, I'll be using one of the computers up front here as an attack machine. And then when you guys walk in, I'll give you directions on your keyboard what you're supposed to do. And we'll do about a 10-minute attack. And then we'll stop it, and I'll have you gather around my computer. We'll talk about what was gathered in that 10 minutes, and we'll discuss it. So, all right, so that's always a fun one. And then week 5, review questions and quiz. So we're going to be talking about ways to secure a network. First way is host, the actual server itself, securing that, and different definitions that go in that. So securing a host, basically a network server, or even a client would be a host as well, a home computer or a desktop computer at work, or laptop or other device. But 3 elements to secure: the host itself, the applications within the host, and the data within the host. Okay, and again, the host could be a server, could be a client computer, laptop, mobile device, anything in between. The applications that's in the device, and then also the data that's hosted there. Securing the host involves protecting the physical device first, who can access it, when they can access it, and how they can access it. Securing the operating system using security-based software applications and monitoring logs. So preventing unauthorized users from gaining access, 3 ways you can do it: physically, secure that host or device from being accessed. Also with the hardware, the host hardware has security as well you could implement, or mobile device security. In this room right now, if you look up at the ceiling and look at your computer, really the ceiling's the best example of the projector. It does have a steel cable mounted to the ceiling, wrapped around the projector. Even though this room is alarmed and there's a sensor in the corner when we lock it up, all the rooms on campus will have that, because believe it or not, years ago, not too many years ago, when we didn't have those, people would come in and swipe a projector or anything else they could get their hands on. And so securing devices is about most important when it comes to security. Physical security, restricting access to equipment areas like server rooms. A lot of businesses will have their networks in a closet, and so some way to secure that generally is outside of the public realm, in a locked room or locked door. They'll have
tinted windows.
Servers will be secured behind a locked door of some type. And let's talk about the locks for a second. A standard key entry or proximity card. Proximity card is what most businesses use today, where basically you can just put whether it's a key fob or whether it's a card itself, could be a finger, whatever. A lot of different types of door access today. Even with retina scans and things of that nature, you could do that. Palm print, gate, and we'll talk about some more as the discussion goes on, like the Mantrap that was mentioned in the quiz. Key locks can be compromised if keys are lost, stolen, or duplicated, but I've also seen key fobs given to other people, and people use it. It doesn't stop people from using it. There's nothing from stopping it. Most likely in secure IT areas, you'll also have cameras of some type and high-level security. We're securing a lot of secure data, hosting a lot of secure data. So here's some examples of a residential key lock on the left. On the right, a deadbolt key lock, which some of your residentials have today, depending on where you live and what type of crime you might have in that area. This door here, by the way, is proximity. It can be accessed by key code or a proximity card, either one. So recommended key management, change locks definitely after loss of keys, whether it's stolen or employee leaves and doesn't return the key. A lot of companies will actually, regardless if employee returns the key or not, if it's an actual key, they'll change the lock anyway, just in case the employee didn't duplicate it, which doesn't. You can find places, even though some like Ace Hardware will definitely look at keys. It says do not duplicate. They won't duplicate. but there's machines out now that you can use that sometimes will bypass that and won't read that, especially if you put like tape over it or something like that. Issue keys only authorized to authorized users. Keep records of keys. Keep track of it, who you issued a key to. And then master keys should not have identifying marks whatsoever on the key. So recommended key management continuing, securing unused keys in an unlocked safe, keeping it monitored, marking duplicate master keys with do not duplicate, wipe out manufacturer serial number, prevent duplicates from being ordered. Again, all these things can be hacked pretty easy. So most businesses are going towards a proximity type of door entry, or even the thumbprint door entry as well, or clocking in door entry. With thumbprint, you clock in and out, log in. How many uses thumbprint to log into work or to clock into work? I know a lot of companies do in Rockford. In fact, if you just, when you leave tonight, if you go to Highlander, right there in Mulford, and when you walk in the door and take a left, like you're going back to the restrooms, there's a clock for employees, and there's they use a thumbprint to clock, and they've had that for like 7 years. So they're one of the first ones that I know of, grocery store wise, that use that. And so, and again, it's easy to give somebody a card to use for proximity, but it's hard to give somebody your thumb. Pretty hard. I mean, right. Not impossible, but I guess you cut it off and give it to them. Or do some fancy smancy, prosthetic work and stuff like that. But anyway, most people aren't going to go to that.
Or you can always do one of those, how the FBI or crime users use the dust and then the fingerprint.
Yeah.
Fingerprint.
Yeah, the problem with that is a lot of these readers today will have to have on the fingerprint will need to feel a pulse, have to hear pulse, feel pulse, and blood flow. Okay. On some of the newer ones. Now you're right. Years ago, when readers first came out, it just needed the actual print. That's all it needed.
My fingers are cold. It won't work.
Yeah, and that's true. And a lot of times because of that, they'll have you do different digits to when you're doing the proximity. Cipher Lock. Let's talk about that. Cipher Lock basically is more sophisticated, a combination of different ways to get into a door. Can be programmed to allow individual code to be accessed, like this door here is a Cipher Lock, and also proximity both. These you can time delay it, you can time stamp it to open and close at a certain point, or can be accessed at a certain point. It records when the door is open and which code to use that door to open. And HR can use that to say, hey Joe, I noticed you showed up at 8:05 today, you should have been to work at 8. How'd you know that? It's a log as soon as you use the proximity card. So a lot of folks that even on salary that might not clock in, HR uses proximity card to determine when they show up, basically. It can also be vulnerable to shoulder surfing as far as when it comes to what we're talking about here, cipher locking, because it is a key they enter in, it's a key code they enter in, basically. And often used in conjunction with what's called tailgate sensor, and basically that would determine somebody in a car, somebody standing behind you with some type of mirror looking at what you're doing at the door. I've even seen tailgate sensors that they put it on top of the buildings, hackers will, pointing down to the lock and seeing people as they type in stuff. We've caught stuff like that before. So here's an example. This one's a little bit different, this door. It actually has 9 numbers on the door, like 3 across and 3 down. So this is just an example of one though, what it looks like. Also, ID badge I've already mentioned, physical token on an ID badge. The ID badge emits some type of signal identifying they're the owner using a proximity reader. RFID tags, these can be affixed to the badge, and RFID is used in stores to determine if a person's purchased something or not. If it's not been read by the cash register, an alarm can go off when you exit the building or exit the store. You might have had that happen on accident. Read by an RFID proximity reader, and the badge can remain in the pocket of the person or on the pocket on a clip or something like that. So here's the RFID can be actually like this right here, just stickers, can be placed on any device, laptops, mobile devices, everything in your building that's basically hardware related, not just badges. And so I've worked at places where they've done that, and not impossible, but to remove one of those, you actually destroy the badge, and then from that, there's enough. If you look at that little dot right there on the left side, a lot of them will have multiple dots throughout the badge. So even if you destroy it and they aren't able to take it off and try to leave with a destroyed badge, more than likely one of those dots is going to be left on that sticker somewhere that they didn't get off. They try to use a razor blade or something, and it's still going to recognize it when they go out. Mantrap is one of the questions. This brings back to the Mission Impossible example I gave a few weeks back. Also, there's a Star Trek episode in '69 that's actually called Mantrap. Any Star Trek fans, that talks about and uses this type of it actually, in that episode, it uses a woman to actually woo Spock, in which, if you remember, Spock wasn't a woman's guy. He wasn't like a guy going out looking for the ladies. But anyway, he did fall for this lady in this episode, and she was the Mantrap basically for Spock.
I don't remember them.
Yeah, it's called Mantrap. Google it when you get home. But anyway, if you notice on this one door is a normal door coming in. We'll say it's a left door there on the left side, just a normal door. The right door, though, is more secure. Like, say, on the right side might be a server room, possibly. We'll say it's a server room. Well, if folks get into the first door and they hack into it, and they usually make it on purpose a little bit easier to hack into that door, because if they get in that room, it's not going to really matter. It's not going to get anything. There's nothing in the room. Second door, though, can be much harder, and it can lock them in the room. The Mantrap can lock them in. If they try to hack the second door, there's a mechanism that triggers the first door to lock, and you can't get out until security comes or whatever the case may be. And so Mantraps used a lot in governmental facilities, military facilities use Mantraps, those two types of facilities for sure. Access list. This is what records a record of individuals who have had permission to enter a secure area, like this. Also records times when they've entered and left a certain region. It can be timed, by the way, not just by proximity, but by sensors in the room. So a sensor can be pointed to a door. When somebody's let in, it senses that person and watches their movement as they leave the room, and then timestamps it when they left the room. Cameras can also be used for that as well. Mantrap separates the secure from non-secure devices and monitoring. Only one door may be open at a time. So once they shut that first door, if they're trying to hack in, or they attempt to hack in the second door, they're locked in and can't get out. Video surveillance, very popular, very inexpensive today for home users and small businesses to do video surveillance. I definitely recommend it, and not just Rockford, but everywhere, wherever you might go, to have closed circuit television or some type of monitoring. You can use a simple phone that you don't use anymore, or an iPad you don't use anymore, or a Droid tablet you don't use anymore as a monitoring device. And there's software out there that lets you use that. Yeah.
I saw trail cams at work. People come in and they use the hunting trail cams or deer
For
cams.
monitoring?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And it's much cheaper than commercial grade, for sure,
Right.
a lot of times.
And like also too now, like they even use them for their businesses and farms. And
Sure,
because
makes sense. It's the same technology, just different manufacturing, but
And
same
it's
exact
camouflage,
technology. Do what now?
it's camouflage too. So
Yeah,
like,
exactly. There you go. You can put it
people-
outside, out in the trees or whatever, and mount it up there. Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Fencing. This is where you basically secure area by fencing. Modern perimeter fences are equipped with other deterrents. There's even fencing that's actually invisible now too. That basically a person, and you've probably seen those with dogs. Watch out for invisible fence or whatever. And it's a real thing. I've known people that have had Rottweilers and pit bulls that use invisible fence, and they do work. But if you walk past that visible fence,
They get shot.
you might be dead. So you just have to be careful but perimeters, it can be physical fences, or today could be invisible fences as well. So here's some examples and these are kind of cool. Some of these fencing deterrents. They have some technology out called anti-climb paint. It's a non-toxic petroleum gel-based paint that's thickly applied, does not harden, making any coated surface very difficult to climb. Typically used on poles, down pipes, walls, tops, railings, above the head, like 8 feet or higher. Anti-climb collar is a spike collar that goes above 3 feet from the pole, preventing anyone from climbing. Spike collars are for protecting an area in poles like CCTV or in areas where climbing a pole can be an easy point of access and securing a fence. Roller barrier, independently rotating large cups with a diameter of 5 inches affixed to the top of a fence, preventing the hands of an intruder from gripping the top of a pole to climb over it. Often found around public grounds and schools where non-aggressive barriers are important. And then rotating spikes installed on top of walls, gates, or fences. Tri-ring spikes, collars rotate around the central spindle and can be painted to blend into the fencing. So hardware security, going into more on that, as far as physical securing, a host software. Portable devices can have steel brackets and slots like the cabling on this monitor or on the overhead projector there. Laptops can also have the same. In fact, most of your laptops come with called a safe lock on the side of it or the back of it, a little piece of metal that you can use for cabling to cable it in at work or at home or whatever. Laptops may be placed in the safe. Most companies don't do that, so they do the cabling. That's pretty reasonable. About $3 to $5 if you shop around and get a bulk order for a 3-foot length or something. Locking cabinets can be pre-wired for power and network connections, and then allow devices to be charged while stored for like laptops, tablets, things of that nature. Here's an example of what one looks in the laptop. And you see that piece on the right that plugs into the laptop. A lot of your modern laptops, Dell is an example that has these pre-designed, pre-fabbed in all of their Dell laptops for the most part. And then it comes with keys, as you can see. Now the keys, a lot of times, are easy to access those type of keys and to hack those type of keys. They're actually the same type of key used for like some old school vending. Some of the newer type of cabling locks don't include the keys. They include a combination lock instead of a key, or they include a proximity lock instead of a key. So a number of different locks can be used. So securing mobile devices, already mentioned some of the ways, but let's say a mobile device is stolen. All mobile device technologies now, from iPhone to Droid, and even some laptop OS companies, will have on what's called remote wipe and sanitation option, to where if it's stolen, and bless you, and they ever connect to the internet, the person that stole it, you can have it be wiped, the data be wiped immediately once it's connected. GPS tracking can pinpoint within 100 meters. You might have seen videos. If you just Google Siri tracking thieves or find iPhone being tracked and being arrested type of Google that, you'll see a whole bunch of people being arrested by police officers because they had the GPS tracking on that Find a Phone. Droid has the same technology. Yeah.
There's actually, I just saw a recent, I don't know if it was online, a story about they did that with TSA.
Mm-hmm.
TSA employees stole the
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they
like
caught
that.
one right up to his house.
I like that. You know, that goes online probably.
There
Yeah.
was actually a story too about how like that one child went
Watched the
missing
video?
and she had like a Snapchat.
Try to blame
And they traced her that way?
I think the phone eventually died. I don't know. There was a suspect. I don't know if they convicted him yet.
But that technology was used to at least trace them
I
down.
think
Well, that's good.
Snapchat, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So mobile wiping, remote wiping, sanitation. You can even have it to where if you just lost the device, I've done this before with my wife, I can find it because all of our devices are connected to find an iPad or it's called Find a Phone, I think is what it is in iOS. What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Find My iPhone. And basically, I found hers a lot and pinged it, and it's been in the, a cushion under the couch. I don't know. and it starts ringing, and she can get it. So, and I don't have to be home to do that. And one of the weird things is she didn't like was they were taking, her and some ladies were taking a trip from St. Louis to Chicago, and I'm sure you guys have taken that trip. Maybe some of you have. You know how you can go to Highway 55, can come into 3951.
Yep.
Well, I told him, I said, make sure you take that 3951 exit. Don't just keep going because you're running right into Chicago if you bypass that. And knowing how they start talking when they're on the, there's 5 ladies in the vehicle. So I was watching them on the map as the car was driving because I could see her phone moving, and you can see her phone moving on the, I'll find my iPhone map. They bypassed 3951, about 5 minutes passed. I called her and said, you guys passed 3951, are you going to Chicago or something? She goes, no. And I'm like, how'd you know that? And I said, well, I'm seeing your phone. It went by 3951. Well, anyway, she told the driver, hey, we passed 3951. She goes, no, we didn't. They pull over the rest stop. Sure enough, they did. Turn back around and go. They're about 10 minutes past it. So you can use it for cases like that as well.
That's funny.
So securing mobile devices further, voice encryption, you can use to mask content of a voice communication over smartphone. I still don't think we're there in consumer use for sure. I'm not saying it's not used. I know it's used in some fields like in military and governmental, but not in. You can buy apps, by the way, that let you do voice encryption, but it's not built into the OS yet. Okay, for mobile devices. But there are softwares you can buy, by the way, or apps you can buy to have a voice encryption to where anything you speak in your phone will be encrypted, but you have to use that app to do it. You can't just,
It's got to be running the whole
it
time.
has to be running all the time for that to work, if that makes sense. 5-step process to securing a OS. We talked about this in the quiz. Security policy is a must. Host software baselining, making sure on that software, on that operating system, what the baseline is for that, as far as what's needed for antivirus, what's needed for hard drive, memory, programs, configuring SQL, configuring any application that might be on there. So software baselining is determining what software needs to be on that machine and what baseline is needed for that to function correctly, every software to function correctly. And it could be, again, be updates, definitely be updates of antivirus, updates of software. Configuring OS, security system and settings, deploying the settings through maybe like Active Directory would be probably the best example for in the MS world, Microsoft. And then implementing some type of patch management, which most IT departments now do their own patch management. They don't allow Microsoft to do it. They kind of you can buy multiple different types of packages to do your own patch management, to where basically you can bundle up a patch management of all the software on a machine or server to be updated at a certain point in time after it's been tested behind the scenes.
Woo server.
Do what now?
The Woo server, Microsoft
Yeah.
Woo server.
Exactly.
It works quite well.
Yep, exactly.
But it
And
doesn't
there's
do-
tons of different ones that you can get.
But I
Tons of
wish it
different
would
ones.
do third party.
Do what now?
I wish it would do third party
Yeah.
because there's Flash, Shockwave, Java, which is a really super painful.
Right,
but-
right.
And if it could do all that, that would really cut down a lot of frustration.
Yeah, and there are third-party ones though. Picking on what you said, that you can get that allows that to happen. We use that here on campus. We use a
Are you
third-party
using management agent?
software that basically can include not just MS software, but also any third-party software that's on that machine, and update it. But again, we can control it with this licensed software that we purchased like 5 years
you
ago.
gotta purchase it. I was gonna say.
And basically what you do is you include in it,
Well,
you include in the software all the updates, and then you tell the folks to keep their computers on at 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7, 10 o'clock, whenever you want to do it, midnight. It starts the process on all the machines. It installs the updates on all the packages on the software on that machine, restarts it. They come up in the morning, don't know anything happened, but it did, and all their updates are there. So that works well. So also configuring operating system security settings, hundreds of different settings can be manipulated. This semester we'll talk about Active Directory more. We'll also talk about Microsoft management tool within Windows, how you can use that to play around with it. Typical configuration baseline is like changing insecure default settings, eliminating unnecessary software, services, protocols, enabling security features such as a firewall. So you go through a sweep every once in a while on your computers to determine what that baseline would be. And it's usually not one person that determines it, it's a group of people that determines it. And also we include in that non-IT folks, because sometimes we're unaware of softwares that are being used sometimes IT will assume a certain software isn't being used, and it is still being used. And so by including managers in these high-end meetings is a good thing to do, and employees of those managers, because a lot of times they can tell you things that you don't know because you don't work in that area and you don't use their systems like they do. Now deploying the settings, once you get them set up, Active Directory is one that we use a lot. But again, is most likely in the MS world, or Microsoft world, what folks are going to use. Group policy is within Active Directory, and group policy is, we've talked about briefly in here, but basically it allows, it's a centralized management way to deploy security rights to multiple user groups, okay? So in this room, if you guys were marketing and this side was sales, when marketing logged in, they had certain rights and privileges to network drives, programs, things of that nature. When these folks log in, sales log in, they also have certain rights and privileges to network drives and programs. Right. Now you can move anywhere in the business on a different computer, log into those computers and suck down those Active Directory rules to that computer. And so group policy allows you to do that. And most likely on group policy, the way we do it in IT is we test it on one machine, see how it works, work with multiple groups and peoples to determine that policy. Once everybody agrees upon it, then we apply it to those groups. Okay, once those are applied to the groups, they're updated yearly. Those group policies are. There's new things that need to be added, old things need to be taken away. And it is a process. It's not something, again, one person does. It's a group effort, and it's including IT and non-IT folks both, as far as what's needed and what's not needed. Now, operating systems have increased in size over the years, as you can imagine. New attack tools have also made secure functions vulnerable. Security patches then are real important for sure within server OSs and regular client machines as well. And general security patches, for the most part, are okay to push out, but still we test them in a honeypot environment, in a virtual environment where it's off the grid, on a machine in a virtual environment that has all the software that all the computers on the system could have. To see how everything works. We also employ other folks from different departments to come in to test that software. Again, I'm an IT, I'm a programmer, I'm a network person, IT manager. I don't use them like people do, like they do in the field. So they're going to come in and use something and go, well, yeah, everything works but this. Well, that's weird. An example is this. Everything works, but when the notifications we send to people doesn't work anymore. Oh, that's weird. Well, you know why? We went into McAfee and found out we had in there originally in a massive email that are executable for that application. We took it out. Somebody took it out. When you take it out, you can't use SMTP to send out of that application. So we had to add it back in. And so stuff like that would not have been found if we did not employ other folks from other divisions to come in to look at it, because we didn't even test that feature. And we're not going to test all those features. IT is not going to be able to test all those features. We don't use it. That makes sense? Right. So you have to include other folks that use that software that I call are the experts of that software. I'm not an expert of that software. I'll tell them every day of the week I'm not. I'm just here to support. So you need to tell me what's working, what's not working. We can do our best to try to fix it. Can't promise you we can fix everything, but we're going to do our best to try to fix it. But again, I think a lot of IT departments try to do it themselves. I know they do, without including outside folks. And the error with that is what I just mentioned. You're going to have holes in that logic because, again, you're not the expert in that software. Whatever the package might be, it doesn't matter what it is. Here's some examples of some operating system code lines over the years up till present. Linux, 5 million lines of code. FreeBSD, 9 million. Red Hat Linux, 30 million. Microsoft 7, 50 million. Mac OS 10.4, 86 million. Debian, 324 million lines of code. An example of an application I built for a company in the last, since 2009, has 2.5 million lines of code. Just one application. And so operating systems, again, are much bigger and more complex than an application. And so a lot of lines of code, a lot of size really increases because of that as well. Let's talk about different types of fixes or patches that they call it in updating operating systems. Hot fixes is an example of a specific customer situation. Example is this. HP, right? Everybody's heard of HP, right? HP
yeah.
printers. Well, years back, give one example. HP had Microsoft push out a hot fix of a driver that was not working with their new printers they just deployed. So Microsoft did. Okay, it was included in their hot fixes in the roll up. If you applied it to your computer, it did absolutely nothing to your computer, but it was a hotfix specifically designed for HP. Most consumers aren't aware of that, and I think most IT folks, some IT folks aren't aware of that either. That a hotfix is actually a unique hotfix for usually a certain big company, like an HP, like let's talk about a big university. Let's like University of Madison, Wisconsin, as an example. MIT, Harvard. You can actually look in hotfixes and see the names I just dropped in those hotfixes for sure over the last year. Dell, as an example. Do you have something to say? No? Okay. But hotfixes definitely are a customer situation. Generally, they're okay to apply, but we still test them. Service pack accumulates over time. All the security updates, additional features, and they generally come out quarterly from Microsoft, or if not once a year in years past. Same with Apple, they do the same thing. Implement patch management. Modern operating systems can perform automatic. Home users, for the most part, I think you're okay for home users to implement automatic patch management, to turn it on. For businesses, no. Because there's so many different applications used in businesses. And the applications, I guess, it's the age of those applications is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
The age of the applications, because if you think about it, a consumer is going to have fairly new applications that when they bought their PC, and they've added new since then. So really not going to have many issues, really. But if you talk about a business been around for 30 years, they literally might have applications on their computers that are 30 years old. And so they have to be able to work, and some fix could break something. Especially we had an issue in IT not too long ago when the 64-bit machines came out, because some of the old software built for 16-bit and 32-bit would not work and will not work on 64-bit machines. And so for a while, until they were rewritten, we used what's called virtual Windows XP mode, I believe is what it was called, in Windows you could use. But I do know one company here that waited about 2 years to convert their software that they used a lot. And until that point, they just used an out-of-service Windows XP machine, 32-bit, until they could do that on the software. Because there's just one computer that needed to run it anyway. And that's not uncommon, by the way, what I just mentioned. There's still, by the way, companies, businesses, universities running old OSs for the very reason I just mentioned. Because their software they built years ago will not run on a 64-bit machine, which will be hard-pressed, a consumer would be anyway, hard-pressed to buy a 32-bit machine. For the most part, all new vendors are pushing out 64-bit, which they should be. Now, can you still purchase 32-bit machines?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. You can still do that. There's companies that do that. But the vendor, the last point on patches can sometimes create problems. I just mentioned why. Here, an example, Adobe Acrobat, right? Pushed out a patch about 6 months ago that rendered, I believe it was 50 million networks worldwide useless from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. On a Monday. And it was only users that had a certain version of Adobe, which was Adobe Professional, a certain version of Adobe Professional, that applied a patch that disabled ports, closed out ports on a network from accessing ports like, port 80, which you need for the internet, port 21 you need for FTP, so pretty important stuff. So what they did was, Adobe, they rolled back the patch online, alerted everybody. IT departments like ourselves, we had to do this. We just rolled back the patch basically. And it wasn't individual servers that we had to do it on. It was customers in our business that we aren't in control of their machines, updated their machine, which they should, and it blew up that network connection. So even if we would have tested it, which we did, it wouldn't have caught in that instance. And again, is that going to happen even when you try your best to do things right? It's still going to happen for sure. So here's an example of in Windows, like for home users, applying updates automatically. This is generally all unchecked on a business machine. We also block Microsoft's website for updates as well. To whoever user was try to do it themselves, because you could go in here in Microsoft into properties in OS and try to update it yourself manually. It would block it and just say not available. And so from a firewall level, we block that IP address so folks can't do it themselves. And that's also, whether people get bored or whether people do whatever, either way, again, you plan for the best, you hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And if they try to do that, you can guard against it from stuff like that. Automated patch update services, managing patch locally rather than rely on vendors. That's how we do it here on campus at Aquarobic Systems I work at. Woodward Governor does it that way. Ingersoll does it that way. Each of them uses their different patch management that they use, but they're all their own automated patch management system that works for them, and that's what I recommend. It's not one thing's going to work for everybody. So whatever works for you. Advantages of automated patch service. Administrators can force updates to install a specific date or time, how we do it, at a certain time, like midnight, run it on everybody's machine. And you can tell the software, after it's all ran and installed, restart the operating system. If there's any errors, send it to this person or these groups of people in IT to know what those errors might be. And sometimes there might be an error. Advantages, continuing. Computers not on the internet can receive updates. Users cannot disable on circuit bed updates. Now the way, on that second bullet at the bottom, the way we do it, we push it out to the computer during the day when people we know are connected to the network and to the internet both. Because the internet could go down at 2 in the morning, could go down at 3 in the morning, whatever. Network could go down as well. So we push the package to the machine, and the package is on the machine when they leave at 5. The software package, the executable packages on the machine. But it's set up as a task manager type thing, basically, to where at a certain time it runs that package, so it doesn't bog. You can imagine if let's say 500 computers, right? Just to throw a number out there. You wouldn't want 500 computers hitting a network folder at 3 in the morning and dragging down a package. Let's say on average, ours is about 1.5 gigs on average, and that's a small one, basically, a small update. You wouldn't want 1.5 gigs being downloaded 500 times separately from a network. That would bog down the network tremendously and would maybe bring it to a screeching halt possibly. So that's the advantage of having it on the local versus everybody downloading it from the network and running it. An example of a updated patch system, and we'll use this as this example here is like McAfee. We'll use that as an example here, or Norton, anyone you want to throw out there that's an updated patch system for antivirus. Okay, they have their online update server, McAfee or Norton does. Down below on your server locally, you also have connected to all the servers and switches or servers and clients an automatic patch server as well that basically pushes to the clients as you as updated them. You can say, I want to push it at 6 in the morning, and I want to push it at noon, or I want to push it at noon and 5 o'clock or something like that, whatever it is. You want to generally push it during off peak time. Noon is generally good when people are on lunch. You definitely don't want to do it at 8:39 in the morning as everybody's coming in. That's not good. But you control when that is. McAfee doesn't control it, you control it. Even though the vendor is pushing the updates to you all the time as a server, you control when they are pushed. You can tell McAfee, I want these to be pushed at this time and this time. Okay, it could be a lot of businesses do noon and 3 a.m. in the morning. They do that as well. So you control however you want to do it. So here are some ways to secure with anti-malware. Antivirus is one, definitely you need that. Tons of examples out there, free and paid both. Just make sure you have one that's comparable, well-reviewed antivirus software. Software examines a computer for infections, scans new documents that might contain viruses, searches for known virus patterns. Weaknesses, the vendor must continually search for new viruses, update, and distribute signature files to the users, and they do all the time, or they should. Alternate approach, code emulation. Questionable code can be executed in a virtual environment or what's called a sandbox, to where if it sees something that's weird, that the software is doing something weird, it can isolate it and sandbox it for a time and let people know about it, like IT or the person on the computer or both. And so a lot of the newer antiviruses, I know McAfee, Norton, both Sophos, has this sandbox type of built-in event where basically it looks at the code, how it's executed, or what things are running in the background for anomalies or similarities of what malware might do, and it can isolate it and lock it down.
Is that normally quarantine?
Do you want to quarantine? Well, quarantine is totally different. Quarantine actually will quarantine a file. Sandboxing will actually isolate a program or a file in a sandboxing environment, and it won't touch anything else in your system. And then you can go in and take it out of the sandbox if you want to. Or what we generally do is we review or research what's going on, because we might not, new stuff comes out so much, you're not going to keep up on everything. So research what's going on. If we find out it's an issue, then we can add it to the rule of this is going to be blocked from now on. A lot of times in the IT world, it's not really a software, but more of a, say they go to a website, everybody's going to a certain website that a vendor told them to go to or something, and on that website is an application they had them download for like some utility. Let's say it's a utility to order stuff online. It's a little executable utility. Well, in that executable utility is sending out, for some reason, a whole bunch of data. We don't know what that data is, and since we don't know what that data is, we're blocking it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And again, we don't know what that data is. Now the vendor says, "Oh, it's just whatever." We'll say it's just it's just seeing if you guys have new orders, which it might be. It might just be a poorly programmed program to where it's just constantly pushing out so much, but it's literally bogging down the computer and the network both, so we block it. If that makes sense? Yeah, we can block it. And so let's talk about spam. Has anybody had any spam recently in your inbox that you want to share, or you've actually caught spam? Because a lot of times most of your modern inboxes, modern email systems will block spam pretty good to where you don't even see it. But has anybody recently went into your spam folder just to read something to see?
Yeah.
Okay, well, give me an example of you remember what one was, possibly?
Oh, I was heir to some kind of bunch of money.
There you go. How much money? Like 500 million or something?
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
right. Delete. Yeah, I was like, oh, really? Next
But spammers can, as you mentioned there, the Nigerian spam, or
Yeah,
is what that one's called.
He was some lawyer from Nigeria. As soon as
Okay.
I saw that, like,
Yeah, so if everybody tonight was to go home and look at your spam folder, you would find stuff like that for sure. The other one's Viagra. That's a big one. That's the number one spammed email, by the way.
yeah, I see.
And these are real products. So this is a real product. And spam isn't always wanting money from you. Spam is sometimes promoting a real product for consumers to purchase. And the idea behind spamming is really social engineering, because if they feel like, it's been proven in marketing that if a person looks at something 3 times within a day's time, whatever that might be, a video, a commercial, an email, 66% of those people will buy if they viewed it 3 times. That's a pretty high number.
Buy it that day.
That's a pretty high number, huh?
Buy it that day or put it under wish.
Buy it at some time, yeah, buy it at some time. That's a pretty high number, right? Now, because of that, that's why spam is so prevalent. Now, we know the Can Spam Act of Congress put out many years ago. It's not going to stop them because it's a multi-billion-dollar business for spamming. And spamming can come as a full-time job for appliances like, different types of, like Barracuda is an example of a spam appliance. Most businesses get blocked for spam. 97% of their emails are blocked for spam. 97%. Only 3% are brought into the inbox. That's crazy, right? And that's not changed. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. It's pretty much stayed within the last 3 or 5 years. It's stayed anywhere between 96%, 98%, somewhere around there. I think we're at 97% the last time I read. And so that's not uncommon, by the way. And so spamming is a huge thing. We have to use spam filters. We have to use spam compliant appliances like Barracuda. But different types of spam methods of filtering is a Bayesian local hosting, which is like blacklisting or whitelisting, and then blocking certain attachment types. Let's see it. And so maybe you got like a PDF or an executable. Definitely you want to block those, right? Maybe a software XLS or something. A software creates an XLS for some type of automated system to start when you fire up an Excel spreadsheet. Pop-ups aren't around too much anymore. They used to be.
Yeah.
Not so much. I'm not saying they're totally gone, but
I've seen a couple every once in a while.
Most of those aren't even pop-ups, those advertisements.
yeah, mostly advertisements anymore.
And because they pop up in the window, it's not a pop-up, it's an advertisement.
Yeah, it's an advertisement for something, but there is still pop-up blockers. In fact, if you look at your browsers today, Chrome, IE, Firefox, if you load them today at home, brand new, don't do anything to them, pop-up blockers enabled on all of them, on every one of them. You have to go in and uncheck it to not be. So I'm sure there are things being blocked that we just don't see. I know there are, but there used to be back in the day, and you guys remember these, right? These pop-up blockers, these ad blockers that would basically alert and block the pop-ups from occurring, and then alert the user of it.
Norton would do that, McAfee.
Yep, Norton does that as well. Pop-up blocker.
ADT would do that.
Yep.
AdBlock Plus.
Yep. Firewalls, let's talk about that. There's on the firewall, basically, is designated or designed to prevent malicious attacks from coming into the networks or going out of the network. It may be hardware or software based. Zone Alarm is a good software based one if you've not ever played with it. You can download Zone Alarm and see activity going in and out of your computer easily with Zone Alarm. Host based runs on a local system. Microsoft 7 or even 10 has a firewall built into it that designates 3 zones for firewall, is public, home, or work, and then the users can configure each accordingly. Monitoring logs. Your operating system has monitoring logs that basically can be tracked of when users log into a computer, when they log out of a computer, when login fail attempts occur, and that's on every Windows operating system and even Mac operating system, Linux operating system. The log creates, we use them for general audits and compliance, and we can look at security application logs and operation system logs to determine, again, when people try to log into a system and fail because of failed login attempts. The system event log records client requests, server responses, users information, account information, operational information. Security application log can be like antivirus, an automated patch update. Here's an example of a Microsoft system log, which I'll blow it up here. And so you'll notice in here,
Security log.
it's highlighted the security section here, and over here is actually what it's showing. Now where it says audit success, what that means is the computer logged in or logged out successfully. The person logged in or logged out successfully. If it failed, it would be red, showing it failed, meaning the password was incorrect, or whatever the case may be.
Or somebody that button something by mistake.
Yeah, it could be done. Yeah, it could be done by mistake.
That
Benefits of monitoring things: you can identify instances, and we've used this in the past many times over the years in IT, where somebody's like, something's going on in my computer weird. A file was moved, a file was changed. I noticed when I came in this morning, this was, so we checked the security log, and sure enough, in one incident I'll tell you about without names or places, the computer's trying to be accessed every night for a week around 8 o'clock at night, and then at 8 o'clock at night the next week they got in successfully. So what happened was they finally figured out the password after a week's time, whoever it was. Well, we figured out who it was. It was actually a maintenance person that was on their break and hacked into or figured out the password of a person, and we were able to trace down the time and date. But to get further data to prove it, we had to put a hidden camera over by the computer at night on a cart, which we did, which capture the person sitting on their computer, opening up the lunch sack, logging in the person's computer. We had it pointed right to the monitor as well. So we caught everything the entire 2 hours they were on it.
Wow.
And then brought that to the attention of the firm that was used to do the cleaning. They were fired. We didn't bring any charges against them. They really didn't do any damage or anything. Didn't steal anything. It was just browsing the web and stuff. And they weren't looking at any dangerous files or nothing that we could tell. But they were fired from the. But they asked, do you want to press charge? And we could have, but we didn't. And so, but anyway, that's the benefit of having security logs. And every system at home, in your business, and we'll do it this semester and show you how to get in there and look at it. And again, providing information for things that I just mentioned. Here's an example of a Microsoft Security Essentials application, and it's a baseline application. It also gives on it, this is actually for an antivirus though.
That looks pretty good though.
And basically it gives some of the history here of all detected items. You'll notice it dates back from 2011, February and March of 2011. And it says here that these were removed. There were 3 keyloggers removed and a download Trojan removed from this. And the action was taken. It removed it for them basically before it was ran. It just showed what happened. So application security, let's talk about that. During application development, there is security ramifications that have to be looked at, and even patch management and updates and stuff like that. So we'll talk about that. Application development. Again, this is my wheelhouse, and so I do this through the day. A lot of different standards and ways to build a system over the years, but there's got to be some type of developmental cycle and security cycle so things won't get released. It shouldn't get released, and people won't hurt systems basically. So first way is securing code. Coding standards. One of the ways we secure code today is through source control, controlling the source to where it can be locked down and only people with certain access can get access to that code. Errors on software development where you might have a bug. You might have heard of the word bug possibly in software. That's what that's talking about. When an error occurs or an exception, what happens? The way I build software is every time an error occurs, I get an alert in an email with a screenshot of what was happening on the computer at the time, on that software at the time, the person's name. It gives in that screenshot, in that email as well, captures the exact error and the exact line of code it was in that error to where I can trace it down pretty easily that way by having that information. And I build that into all the types of software that I built over the years. And a lot of companies will do the same thing. You don't know what Microsoft, by the way, is getting when you're running your software. We assume things, but we don't know, okay? What I mean by that is if Windows Word crashes, I don't know if you've noticed this, when you install software now, it says, would you like this vendor to be notified of any issues immediately so they can fix the software, something like that. You've seen that before? What that means is any anomaly or any issue you might have, that vendor could be getting a lot of information from you, not just about the software. They could be getting what operating system you're running, how much memory you have, hard drive, what other applications are installed, what other websites you visited during the day, a whole bunch of data, not just that is outside the application realm. But they're going to need it. But they're going to need that though to determine exactly what you were doing. But they don't tell you that, right? But that's generally what they're doing. They're gathering a lot of data to determine why. Do what now?
Data mining, basically.
Yeah, they're doing data scrapes and data mining of exactly everything you've been doing up to that point to determine how they can fix it. It's not a bad thing, but most consumers, if they knew that, probably wouldn't check the box saying I agree for you to investigate immediately, and basically, and they thank you for doing all that good stuff. And for the most part, if they're a comparable company, they're using it in a wise manner. But again,
there's people.
All the data they're getting, things could happen. Just so you know that. Error handling practice to avoid. Basically failing to check return codes, handling all return codes or exceptions in the same manner, divulging potential sensitive data and error information. Like, you wouldn't want to put in an error data. Oh, you forgot to enter this person's, data and then pop up their social security number. You wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want that in there.
That would be bad.
Oh yeah, let me put that in.
Verify user response to the application. It could cause a program to abort. Necessary to check what's called SQL injection. That's basically where if you know coding, SQL injection coding, you can put it in the URL of a web browser or an application login to get into systems without knowing a username and password. Input validation is good as well. Before data is added to a database, validation should occur. If it's a number field, it should be validated as a number. You don't want text in there. Escaping or outputting data. Preferred method of trapping user responses. An example of that would be when you're entering a form online or on an application. When you hit enter on the key, it goes to the next form, field, things like that. Fuzz testing or fuzzing is a software technique that deliberately provides invalid, unexpected, and random data inputs to help programmers trap errors that maybe we don't think of when we're programming. Application hardening, hardening things like executable file attack, where a trick to vulnerable application into modifying or creating an executable file in the system. Defense is to prevent the application from creating or modifying executable files for a proper function. System tampering, using a vulnerable application to modify sensitive data in Windows registry, system startup file, and taking advantage of modifying them. Defense, do not allow applications to modify special areas of the OS. Process spawning, trick to vulnerable application into spawning executable files on the system. Defense, take away process spawning and the ability of application development. The problem with all these I'm mentioning is, that's all good and great if the programmer does these things. But if a programmer knows what they're doing, they can bypass all those things and do whatever they want. And so when the program runs, no system's going to know what the program is doing if the programmer's done things the right way but for the wrong reason, basically.
Basically taking hundreds of millions of people.
It could be. Yeah, exactly. So you gotta be careful what softwares you use. But patch management on software development, rare until recent. And what that's talking about is when you're in development phase of software, you generally don't have patch management. You generally just have updates, different versions of updates until it's released. So securing data, everybody knows this, but data must flow freely. Data security is important, and in order to stop data loss prevention, or to have data loss prevention, you have to have a system of tools in place to help the users, and the goal is to protect unauthorized users from gaining data access. Data loss prevention typically examines data in use, like what's being printed, data in motion, what's being transmitted, data at rest, what's being stored. And the content inspection of the data is analysis of transaction, and it takes context into account. So here's an example of DLP Architecture. It's a web application server, DLP is. And you'll notice here, it has at the top a smartphone with an agent and a laptop with a DLP agent, and a couple of computers, 3 computers, wireless access point, network pipe, and then the actual DLP application and the agent gateway. And all this is doing is basically determining at all points exactly where everything's at on that software, how it's being used. And this software could be any software you can think of. We can use McAfee as an example.
Yep,
McAfee would be a good example of this, and it has its own web application, its own agent network gateway, determining what's out there on all the agents to make sure all in compliance and updated. Here's an example of DLP report telling basically how many out of a file scan, what the percentage of completion, total findings, false positives, valid findings, And then down at the bottom, it gives some data that was found that was kind of bad data or false data in the report. So summary: physical access, making sure you have your servers physically secure, your devices physically secure from laptops, desktop, remote wipe, secure policy needs to be, baselining, third-party out and malware software. And then also monitoring logs, protecting applications running the hardware, and DOS, data loss prevention, DLP, can identify critical data, monitoring and protecting it. So that's it for tonight. Before you leave, make sure you, tonight we're done in here, so you can shut down your machine. And if you could shut down your neighbor's machine that's turned on, that would be awesome. And I appreciate it.
We're using the